Yes, people, we're live. Black Eyes TV in the house once again, bringing you that good information. Today we got a nice, big, special show with our elder. He'll introduce himself. I know you know his face already. I know you've heard some of his information already. This is going to be a first of a few parts. So again, I'm very excited to introduce our elder and brother. So without further ado, let me cut over to him and let him do so. How are you, my brother? Speak to the people.
Hotep to my brother Richie. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be able to share this information and to share this time. I've been looking forward to this because there's so much that we have to talk about. The ties that bind us together. Water can't separate us, so we're here together.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I mean, again, people come in, get comfortable. It's going to be a good show. The title that I've picked is The Seen to the Unseen, the journey of our ancestors, because our brother is going to be talking a bit about history and obviously the principles that guided our ancestors through their journey across the lands and into many different places. So I don't know where you want to start from, brother. It's a surprise to me. So, you know, when you're ready, go in and I will bounce off of you. And again, to the chat room that's joining us, as you come in, feel free to ask questions and I will get them to our brother when they're relevant to us.
Yeah, no doubt. And I encourage, for this to be interactive because there's just so much that we have to talk about. And one of the things that I've worked on through time, here where I am here in Bronx, New York, I've been an educator. I retired in 2009 after spending 31 years with our children in South Central Bronx, teaching them and educating them. I've taught every grade, I've taught every subject. So I have a sense of the developmental psychology and the curriculum that needs to be taught to us as a people in general. And that's what I do. I travel and I work on developing curriculum and explaining to our people what we should know about ourselves as an African people. As Malcolm X told us, the first thing they did was they stole us from Africa. And then they stole Africa from us. Because we don't know who we are. We don't know what we have achieved. They have withheld that in the curriculums that they teach us as it relates to the role that we've played. And out of this, I've developed concepts. And one of the concepts that I talk about is the difference between episodic history and holistic history. Episodic history is when you teach the parts of something. For instance, we teach about West Africa. We teach about the three kingdoms, the Ghana, the Mali, and the Songhai. Well, that's episodic. That's taking an experience from a people that basically existed for a couple of 100 years, long time, but it's episodic in nature. And so we never really get a chance to talk about where did these people come from? Who are these people that we talk about in West Africa? So holistic history allows us to look at the whole picture and to develop an understanding from a holistic perspective, not the episode. Episodes are important, but we always have to remember to take those episodes and bring them all together again to make the story whole. Otherwise, we're only looking at parts. And so what we developed was a curriculum, a study guide around understanding what would bring West Africa. And that's how I got into studying the Dogon people of West Africa.
One of my pleasures.
Because again, when you study the Dogon, you're studying you are studying an episode. But we don't see the relationship that the Dogon people have to the Bambara, to the Miankara, to all of the other peoples of West Africa. Where is the relationship? We don't realize the relationship between the Dogon people and the people of Kemet in Egypt. So what I developed was a series of workshops that looked at various stages of development of the people that would eventually become the Dogon, so that we could understand where that genius came from. Because right now, because it's episodic, you have people out here talking about the visitations of outer space beings, and they normally look like peoples of European descent who came down and shared a knowledge with Black people. The reality of it is that that's just not how it happened. Black folk, through trial and error, through thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands and even millions of years, developed this knowledge and wisdom of studying the heavens and the earth. And so holistic history allows us to see us in our totality. And so that's when you reached out to me and we were talking about doing this, and we talked about, well, let's look at something that would be a little bit more than just one time. A one-time program, because there's so much that we have to talk about. So what I'm looking forward to do with Black Ice and with the community that watches the program is to walk us through a process of understanding who we are as a people, because there's a lot that it's so disconnected that we don't really understand the formality of how great we really are. So that's what I'm looking to do, is to develop a series of presentations like this one, where this one we're going to cover something. This is going to be what I believe to be the initial step in understanding West Africa. And that title is The Origins of Humanity in Africa.
That's so.
And to understand that there's but one race on the planet, and that's the human race. And because of biological climatology, this race was conceived and born, nurtured, sustained, educated, and civilized in Africa. And when Africans got their show together, then they took it on the road and peopled the planet.
Most definitely. Most definitely. Again, people, you heard our brother open up, let you know what it's about. Like, share, subscribe. You know the routine. Keep the information moving and flowing. Again, I urge all the chat room, if you have questions, pose them as and when they come up. If there's anything you hear that you want to query and we can do so in a timely fashion, please let me know, and I will definitely interject it while the brother is talking and imparting his wisdom. And remember, just to reaffirm what he's saying, this is about the collective information and knowledge of where we've come from and how that development looks and has taken place over time, and a rejoining and a reconnecting of our history, so we can see the whole collage as it stands rather than small fragments and bits. So yeah, brother, without further ado, go in.
Well, for every workshop, for every presentation, there'll always be a question. And so the questions for this class, the origin of life in Africa, the question that I pose is a question that everyone who is watching this program should be able to answer. This is the thesis that I'm dealing with. And the question is, what conditions created human life? And what conditions would have created it in Africa? Why is Africa the geographic location, as to why the first human beings would be here? And when we trace this story, we come to realize that the people that we today call Eurasians basically came into existence no longer than 8,000 years ago. The ones that we know of today. And that the original people, the Africans, peopled this planet for thousands and thousands of years. They existed in Africa for millions of years. And there was nobody else on the planet but African people. Now that's hard to believe, because when someone tells a perfect lie, the truth is unbelievable. And there will be people who will attempt to tell a story and negate the reality of what we see and what evidence. You know, the great scholar, good friend, Dr. David Imhotep, wrote a book called The First Americans Were Africans. And in my conversation with Dr. Imhotep, he said to me, he doesn't deal with facts or truth, because facts and truth can change. For instance, yesterday, here in New York, it was raining. That's a fact, and that's the truth. But today, the sun is shining. So it's no longer a truth or a fact. So truth and fact change as it relates to the word that we use. The word that he uses and the word that I choose also to use as he does is the word evidence. When you deal with the word evidence, you can knock out 90% of what history books will teach you about the world today, at least the ones that attempt to make you believe that everything wonderful and great happened when Europeans came into existence. It allows us to bring together, evidence allows us to bring together what is right there for us to see, for us to be able to develop a way to look at the world. And then out of that worldview, we then can make decisions as to where we want to go as a people. And so what we're looking at, let's look at this geologically. Hold on one, brother. I just have to do something real quick.
That's cool. Yeah, people, you know what time it is. Like, share, and subscribe. Tune in. Get your notepads out. Do some research as we're talking. Yeah, that's what it's about.
Well, you know, Brother Richie, one thing we have to do is start to study. You know, we have to start to read. That has to become part of our life. Definitely. The idea of the visual has its place, and I understand that. YouTube has its place, and I understand that. But that must be supplementary to our original research about who we are as a people. For us to be able to move forward, we have to look at this material. And I always tell people, and I ask people, even those who are listening to me today, don't believe a word I'm saying, because what I'm saying to you is not for you to believe me. That's it. My purpose is to make you think. Simple. What I am saying to you is not to be believed or not believed. What I am saying to you is simply think about what I'm saying. Think about the realities of what we face as a people. Come to your own conclusions about what you're hearing so that we can move forward. So you have to look at this from many different subject areas. It's not just history. You have to look at science, the geology, what happened on our planet, oceanography, what happened on our, before human beings existed, before animals existed, before plants existed, what actually happened? And that's why cosmology becomes so important, for us to understand the cosmological development of the universe. And this is why our ancestors understood through nature that we as entities have always existed. We're existing now in this form. And after this form, this physical body releases our ba, or our soul, our spirit returns back from whence it came. Science tells us that energy cannot be destroyed or created. It simply exists for all time and space. And Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum teaches us as an African people in his book, Dark Light. He teaches us that the original human beings who sat at the feet of nature, because nature was our first teacher. Nature taught us. All the answers we need in life, nature will teach you. We tend to run to a computer. Africans and original people run to nature. And so when you're looking at this, you understand that the original human beings, the Africans, understood very clearly that they were six-dimensionals in their existence. Eurasians and Western civilization is three-dimensional. 3 dimensions of length, width, and depth. Those are the 3 dimensions that we're living in. This is what we're forced to live in. But for us as an African people, our fourth dimension is when you take length, width, and depth, and you get to a point where you master it. You then bring those three dimensions together, you create the fourth dimension, which is time and space. Time is history and space is geography. So when you can bring time-space continuum into existence, then you realize, and I often tell people, you know, when you tell people like, oh man, that's deja vu, I experienced that before. Or I feel like I've heard you say this before, or I feel like I've been here before. I feel like I've experienced this before. Well, you have. Because the way in which the cosmic universe is created, you see, when you introduced it as from the seen to the unseen, that was an appropriate title, because that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about the universal human being, the African mindset, that holistic mind can look at the seen, which is science. Science is seen spirituality, and spirituality is unseen science. And so as an African people, if you've experienced something before, it's like if you wrote a book, and then after you wrote the book, you read the book, and you begin to say, you know, I've seen this before. Well, you wrote the book. So you created the experience. So deja vu is nothing but the manifestation of what you've been working towards your entire lifetime. So time and space as a continuum collapses into one existence. You take the three dimensions and you combine them together, the length, the width, and the breadth and depth of everything that you see. You then bring together and you create a fourth dimension, which is time and space. Now, when you get to time and space, you get to a certain point in your existence where you are walking in the light. The light. That's why I tell people, be careful when you talk about light complexion and dark complexion. There is no light complexion and dark complexion. We're all light. When you say light complexion, you give the impression that you're talking about pigmentation, color. Color doesn't exist. Color is a spectrum that our eyes perceive through the ultraviolet and infrared spectrum. But color doesn't exist. So you can't be colored people. You're pigmented. And pigmented comes from this molecule known as melanin. So in Dr. Bruce Bynum's book, Dark Light, he talks about the fact that if you consider yourself dark complexion, what you really should be saying is you are dark light. And if you're light complexion, then you're light. But it's not a complexion. And so in this fifth dimension of light, Black folk then begin to be one with the Creator. After you've got the time-space continuum in place, then you go into your light phase. And that is what this civilization is deathly afraid of us ever recognizing. First of all, they don't even want us to get into time-space continuum because they can't go there. They get kicked out. I'm not speaking about all of them now. I don't speak in absolutes. But I'm saying that this civilization as it exists is three-dimensional. If you're worried about money, if that's what you focus on all your life, if you're focused on your clothing and your shoes and all the material things, you're not out the third dimension yet. And you'll always stay in three dimensions. Only when you see the larger creative force around you will you ever branch out into the fourth dimension. And when you master the fourth dimension, you then master the fifth dimension, which is light. And then when you get to that, then you understand gravity, which is the sixth dimension. And then gravity allows you to travel wherever you see fit. Wherever you want to go, you can go. And so this becomes the other piece that we're dealing with as a people. So these are six dimensions that Black folk are living in. And I'm talking about you don't have to go to school to be in this 6 dimensions. When, you know, we're not talking about a graduate class where you go to school and learn these. These are just basic understandings that are exposed to all universal human beings who are willing to open themselves up to cosmic reality. Now, when you get to this point, you begin to realize that in the very beginning of time, before the beginning began, everything was in the waters of Nun. This is what the cosmology teaches. Not going to stay too deep into that because I realize we only have an hour and a half to do this conversation. So I'm not going to get deep there, maybe down the road sometime. Well, again, but what I really want to get to is the fact that
I feel you on what you're saying on those points. And again, we had our brother Patar Seeker on the other day who set the tone with the time situation.
Yeah.
And the primordial. And we did touch on the Dr. Oyibo angles. And I have those videos up on the channel for people to go and investigate a bit more about those grand unified theorems. So don't worry, our audience, I like to think my audience is watching has gone away and checked out certain things. So we will come back to that, people, and get back. But as the brother said, time and place for everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because the way our neurons in the brain work is that they're connected by information. And we have been so disconnected from our own internal person that we are, the spirit within us, that we have to take this gradually but steady. Dr. Yibo, very good friend of mine. We've been friends since the 90s. The Grand Unified Theory is something that is the cornerstone that all of the high priests and high priestesses were searching and developing and had found. And Dr. Oyibo has found that. In fact, when I first visited London back in 2009, it was because of the DVDs that the community there in UK saw with Dr. Oyibo and myself going back into the 90s. This is very real information. And that's why I say we have to study, because the Grand Unified Theory is in us all. In fact, the Grand Unified Theory is what unites us to ourselves. The Grand Unified Theory is what is uniting me to you right now, Brother Richie, and to the audience.
Most definitely. Real talk.
The Grand Unified Theory is, in fact, the waters of Nun. And out of all of this comes all of these different cosmological events that will lead to our sun throwing off pieces of itself. And the third, the third closest to the sun is going to be what we call our Earth. And on our Earth is going to start as a gaseous ball. It's going to be a ball of fire, just like the sun. But the cooling interstellar space is going to cool off that hot ball of fire, that gas. And eventually is going to create an internal core in this gaseous ball. Inside this ball, in the center of the ball, this core is going to have eruptions, volcanoes, earthquakes, and there's going to be a battle between the hills that are going to come up, and then the water is going to overtake them. It's going to be another explosion, and another hill is going to come up out of the water. Just like what you see happening in Hawaii, what you see happening in the Philippines. Wherever you see these volcanoes, that's what was happening from the core of the earth. And what eventually is going to happen is that there's going to be a hill that's going to rise up out of the water. And that hill that's going to rise up out of the water is going to be what is going to become the landmass on the earth. The center of the hill, that part of the hill that is closest to the sun's light and heat energy, is going to be the continent of Africa. The other parts alongside of the hill is going to separate. That's what we call continental divide. But in the beginning, there was only one continent. Our ancestors called it Ptah. Science calls it Pangaea. They're going to separate, and that's what's going to create all the continents. However, at the tip of the hill, this continent that we're calling Africa is going to sustain the most light and heat energy and direct light and heat energy than all the others. And that is where life is going to occur. Life is going to occur at that spot where the sun is beaming down. Mm. However, it's going to take millions of years because no life is on the earth right now. All life is in the water. And this single cell protozoa, single cell organism, is going to turn into a multicell. The multicell is going to turn into many different things, and one of them is going to be plants. Other things are going to develop, and you're going to get fish. Then fish are going to become amphibians, which means that these are entities that can live in the water or on the land. After a while, what was once gills in the fish are going to become lungs. And what were fins that they swam with are going to become claws, arms and legs. Eventually, the process is going to be, and in Africa, in the countries that we today call Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Congo, and Southern Africa, there's going to be a formation of a human being that we today call Australopithecus robustus. And this is the story of how life would have come from Africa. There's no other life on the planet but in Africa. And this human being is going to take on various aspects. Using Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop's book and work, Civilizational Barbarism, we see that the first human being is called Australopithecus robustus. Robust, very thick. Australopithecus robustus, through its life system, is going to transform and ascend into Australopithecus gracile, and only the best of the best are going to survive. See, this is the thing about life that I've come to realize, is that it's not about the strongest that survive, and it's not about the survival of the fittest. The ones that survive are the ones that can adapt to the new ways. And this is how, if Eurasians don't change their ways, they are going to become extinct. Because they keep talking about the good old days. They want to go back. If I may just say, they want to make America great again. That's over, okay? You know, cry your river, build your bridge, but get over it. Because we ain't going back. Because if you want to make America great again, let's go back to 1492 before they even came here. That's the last time America was great. See, they're trying to hold on to the past. They're trying to hold on to when they had power, but that time is gone now. We as a people now realize who we are. We're learning. So that world that they're living in is over. But my thing is not to argue with them. My thing is, what are we doing? What are we doing as a people? Do we have an economic system in place? Do we have a political system in place? Do we have an educational system in place? Can we defend ourselves? Do we realize that it's only a body of water that separates me from you right now, where you are? Do I think there's a difference between my brothers and sisters in UK or in Holland? Do I see a difference between brothers in Nigeria and in Jamaica and Haiti and Puerto Rico? There's no difference. We're all the same people. There are links that bind us together. And the fact that we can talk this way shows that these links are here, and the separation, you know, the Atlantic is not going to separate us.
Definitely.
Because now we have access to this computer that can connect us all around the world. Because I'm sure that you have viewers all around the world.
Definitely. Definitely. I think
so. I can keep going, but I'm going to stop right there, brother, just in case there are questions or comments or questions that people may have.
Well, I mean, yeah, What do you want to ask? I got somebody in the studio with me, so he's just going to ask a quick question.
Yes. Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening to you, my brother.
Yeah, man. You said something earlier, yeah, when you was talking about the fifth dimension, yeah?
Yes.
And you said certain people will never be able to actually achieve that level. So I do presume you was pertaining that to the white man, yeah?
Well, I was pertaining that to anybody because you know something, brother? That ability, I have seen some of our people who have been convinced that they are not capable of taking care of themselves. I would say that they are Eurasian, but I would not leave out some people of every culture, because this is not a color or a culture. This is a state of mind that we're dealing with. We're dealing with an Ice Age mentality, which peoples of European descent have inherited. And they just don't want to give up their privileges. Selfish, refusing to share. So that to answer your question, yes, but I also want to be very clear that there will be those of all cultures that can ascend into the light. But what I'm saying is that the original people understood this. Those of us who went into the ice and transformed ourselves into Eurasians, we lost that spiritual essence. But some of them still have it. Not many. But I don't want to make it a complexion or culture or a color thing. I'd rather focus on it being the content of your character. But I have not seen many peoples of Eurasian descent who are willing to embrace the light.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm cool with that. Thank you very much, yeah?
Yes, okay. Because I really want to be clear. And, you know, I'm very concerned about our children. And because I'm concerned about our children, and because I want our children to think, the way in which I present my information, I attempt to be as scientific as possible. I have met people in my lifetime of European descent and Asian descent who are one with the light. But for those who remember the great work of Dr. Edward Scobie, the great brother from Dominica, Dr. Edward Scobie used to always tell me, he say, Kaba, don't tell me nothing about good white people. He said, he said, I know they exist. I'm not saying they don't exist, but he'd say good white people act as shields for the bad ones. And I remember also a story told about the 1,000 wolves that are outside my door. And there are 100 of those wolves that would defend me and protect me and give up their life to ensure my safety. But there's 900 of them that's ready to eat me alive. As I look out my window and I see those 1,000 wolves, they all look alike. And also, I don't know where those 100 are that would defend me. So the question becomes, do you think I'm ready to go outside? So what I tell people of Eurasian descent who are pure of heart, I say, it's not that I deny you exist. I just don't have time to look for you. Because there's just too much work that we have to do as a people. But I do recognize that the light has nothing whatsoever to do with culture. Light has to do with your internal spirit that is willing to embrace a world of inclusion of all humanity, and also how you treat the Creator's creations, how you treat the water and the land and the animals and the plants. Do you abuse them? Do you hurt them? You pollute the water, you pollute the land, you pollute the air, you pollute nature, you defile animals, You destroy plants by cutting down trees for no reason at all, but to create a couple boxes of toothpicks. So it becomes important as we move through this. Please, brother, what is your name?
Yeah, Joe.
Joe. Okay, brother Joe. Hope I answered your question. I'm trying to be real careful.
I hear
because
you.
I want to be real clear with what I'm saying.
But if I'm to take you literally, yeah, are you cool with procreating with them then?
Let me put it to you like this. I've been married to a woman of African descent for 38 years. I have never so much as kissed romantically a woman of European descent. That's my choice. That's my decision. But I also realize something else. Eurasians don't have long to live. By the year 3000, the world is not going to look like this. By the time we celebrate the next century, when we celebrate 2100, this world going to look real different. I'm already hearing that there's more black people in UK than there are white people. I'm already hearing that there's more black people in Spain than there are white people. The world is going back to black. As it relates to people who do cohabit with peoples of European descent, they are our allies. Because once a Eurasian mates with an African, that child is black. So in a sense, they are hurrying up the day when the planet will be black. But you see, my thing is, I've never been into dating or in any way cohabiting with other people outside my culture. That's my choice. But if somebody, through whatever reason, exposure, whatever it is, finds him or herself attracted to somebody, I would not want them to purposely marry a person of African descent simply because they just wanted to marry black, because they will be yearning that other person all their life and they will hurt the person that they marry. You can't make somebody love somebody that they don't. So we're dealing with a very interesting thing, because there was a time on this planet where this didn't exist. It's only because Eurasians started this process of the way in which they treated African peoples that we have this problem. There was a time when there was a whole bunch of cohabiting of all different cultures on the planet. That's how we got to look like this. But we're going back to the black. By the year 3000, this planet will be majority black. It's already majority black. But by the year 3000, you're going to have to look hard to find them of Eurasian descent. They're not going to exist. I hope I answered your question. These are good questions. These are questions that we have to have as a people,
This is it. We need to have this dialogue. And I think a lot of time people do want to hear what you elders think on these subjects, because as you're saying, they're more modern connotation questions, but definitely just as poignant.
Yeah, and it's so hard for me. It's so hard for me not to just tell you how I feel. I'm at the age right now where I really don't care if people like me. I just want to tell the truth, as hard as it may be to hear from my perspective. Don't believe me, but just from my perspective. My thing is, me not judge, let's judge I.
So you're not matriarchal then?
I'm matrilineal. Matriarch don't exist. Matriarch only exists when Eurasians started patriarchy. It was never about power. In the African tradition, there was a balance. It was ma'at. It was a balance between the feminine principle and the male principle. It was never about power. It was about the line of descent. It was about understanding the role of the feminine principle, being that which from whence all things come. The feminine principle, not just as it relates to human beings, but in nature. Everything comes out of the feminine principle. But it wouldn't come out of the feminine principle if the male principle wasn't present also. The feminine principle has her role, and the male principle has his role. And when they work together, they create a phenomenal society. Matriarchy is the idea of archy comes out of power, who rules. Matri being female and patri being male. But from the African perspective, my research tells me that it wasn't about who was in power, because they ruled together, balanced as the male and female principle. That's what Ma'at represented, that divine balance, harmony, justice, reciprocity. All of that just equalizes everything. So matriarchy is a word that came into existence when Eurasians became a male-dominant society. Now, DNA has changed that now. Because part of the reason why it was matrilineal was because you could only tell the line of descent through the female. But DNA now can show the male principle now. But there is still a line of descent that runs through the feminine principle, particularly when you get into the actual cells and you get into biology and you begin to look at mitochondria, DNA, where everybody has the mother's blood. Everybody has the mother's DNA.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. I was only asking that because, like you said, like if anyone sleeps with an African, they're African. When, to my knowledge, especially when we're dealing with the dominant facts of the aspects of the female, is that you are of your mother. Yeah. So if someone slept with a white female, you are of that mother. But correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, you are of both. You know, you really are of both. That's why matrilineal became so important, because you're dealing with the line of descent. You're dealing with an ordered and arranged form of governance that families could know who they came from through the mother's line.
Right.
But you wouldn't be in existence if it wasn't for your daddy's sperm. So it's the view that you have towards what it is that we're talking about. You are of your mother. You were in your mother's womb for 10 months. But what brought you into existence was your daddy's sperm. So you are of your daddy too. And if your daddy gave your mommy his X chromosome, which is a female chromosome, then you would be born a woman. If your daddy gave your mommy the Y chromosome, then you'd be born a male. It is meant on the planet for women to outnumber men 3-to-1.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that.
Yeah.
Because women have 2 X chromosomes, men have XY. So right there, you have a 3-to-1 ratio. And it makes sense. Nature wanted the planet to stay populated. So it would only make sense that you would have more women on the planet than men. This is where we get into conversations like polygamy and polyandry, which is multiple husbands and multiple wives.
Someone was just asking about those very 2 subjects that you're just about to go into. 1, what do you think of polygamy? And 2, what do you think of the Y chromosome disappearing on the planet?
Y chromosome will never disappear. No more than the X will disappear. It will always be here. When the Y chromosome exists, humanity will go into extinction. And no matter what they're doing in the laboratories, have no fear for atomic energy, because none of them can stop the time.
That's it.
Okay, nature is not going to let that happen. Now, it's a wonderful thing sometimes for people who really want children that can't have children. But this planet could never remain populated simply using science. That's science fiction story. Eventually, over thousands of years now, we're not talking about overnight, over thousands of years, the civilization will disappear. And if it ever did reappear, it would reappear again as black. There's no way to escape that. That's science. Life comes out of heat. Heat creates darkness. That's just the way it is. Like right now, those of you in the UK and places where it gets cold, me here in the United States, every day I'm beginning to see that I have a little bit of a band on my arm. And that's because I'm getting a suntan. Now, if you'd have seen my arm in January, I didn't have no band because I lost my tan. Yeah. Life comes out of the darkness. When I look outside, I see plants and trees and fruits and things are growing. In the wintertime, everything is dead. Yeah. This is science. This ain't personal. This is science.
I think that's the key element. I think when a lot of people hear Kamene science, they don't understand how much it just ties into you as a black person, how these facets of nature kick back to the most efficient frame that you see on the planet, as you said. And it's not personal. It is a purpose behind what you're seeing. So again, I'm glad that you just made that point and you said it how you said it, because a lot of people believe that it is a personal attack, it's shots fired, it's whatever, but it's just the expressment of nature itself, which you can't get out of. As you said, even if it all goes away, it will restart as a black expressment. Like, you're not going to get out of that.
That's it. That's science. And you can see it and you can understand it. Science is the study of nature, and nature is the essence of the creator. And the thing about polygamy is the fact that it's a woman's thing. Polygamy isn't a man's thing. It's the sisters that come together and they choose the man that will come into their compound, into their home. It's not like the man is choosing, I'm gonna take this one and I'm gonna take that one. No, it's a woman's thing. Polygamy from an African perspective is a woman's compound that creates a society that allows, okay, let's look at it like this. Y'all have that game in UK called musical chairs?
Yep.
Okay, right? You have 3 chairs, right? You play the music and you go around and you try to sit in a chair, okay? Now, if you had 3 chairs and 3 players, what's going to happen when the music comes off?
Everyone gets a chair.
What happens when you have 4 players?
Someone gets left out.
Okay, that's the society that we're living in today. But because we are impacted by jealousy and envy and possessiveness, we are living in a society that doesn't understand that all needs need to be met. So it's not about, and it's also how men react to this also. Because when you were chosen to go into that compound, you had to be a man. And you had to be the type of man that all the women in the compound respected. So it wasn't like you player. Okay, it's not about that. But you see, we're not in that type of mindset right now. So we can't fathom in a society where there are many women and the men outnumber the women 3-to-1. That means that only 1/3 of that community is going to meet its greatest needs and production. When you're in a society where the women outnumber the men, then it is to the need of the society to ensure that everybody's needs are taken care of as human beings. There are some societies where there were more men than women. And polyandry said that women would take on more than one man as a mate. It was all according, you know, you could have had a situation where maybe the men went to war and they died and there weren't that many men in the compound, in the community. Under those conditions, women would have multiple partners. This is just science. This isn't personal. This isn't about he mine or she's mine. This is about we are all each other's. This is an African way of thinking. This is how far-fetched away we are from the way the original mind thought. And if you want to know, look at the animal world. Look at how the animal world functions. All animals have their needs satisfied. Nobody's left out. And so we have a ways to go before that, because now they've got laws as it relates to multiple relationships, multiple marriages. But that's a whole nother situation. When you're looking at Australopithecus robustus, Australopithecus robustus was the first form of human, according to Dr. Diop. Now, there's many different categories, but I just want to deal with the 6 that Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop identifies as the origins of life in Africa. Cool. After Australopithecus robustus, the best and the brightest of the Australopithecus robustus transformed into Australopithecus gracile. Australopithecus gracile was a little bit more graceful, wasn't as thick as robustus. The very best and brightest of Australopithecus gracile, something occurred in the human line that transformed them into another type of human being, and that was because that this human began to make tools. And this was the birth of Homo habilis, the human of ability. The best and brightest of Homo habilis became Homo erectus, that human that stood erect. Now, the evidence of life starting in Africa is that these first 3, Australopithecus robustus, Australopithecus gracile, and Homo habilis, can only be found in Africa. The first time we see any form of human being outside in Saudi Arabia, parts of the world outside of Africa, is Homo erectus. The best and the brightest becomes Homo sapiens, which is thinking human. And then Homo sapiens becomes creative thinking, who becomes Homo sapiens sapiens. Every human being came from Africa and then ventured into the world. No human came independently of their own in other parts of the world. This is what the Eurasians try to talk about when they talk about the polygenesis theory, where there were multiple places of human beings evolving. No, all humans evolve, all humans came out of Africa, period. And so that becomes very important to understand. And here, now you're going to have the movement of Africans in Africa. And this is where the peopling of the continent is going to take place from this area we call the Great Rift Valley.
I was going to say to you, brother, in your studies, what is the earliest recorded civilization or tribe that you know of when it comes to information on those sets of people?
My concern is I can't answer that question because I don't think any of us has the real dates yet. We're pushing the dates further into the past as we go along. And that's why I think we need to start doing that research. We need to support our brothers and sisters on the continent that are doing the type of research. Because as we start talking about West Africa. We're going to talk about, you have a phenomenal historian there in UK, Robin Walker.
Yeah.
And he wrote the book, When We Ruled. And Robin Walker talks about a nation in Nigeria, in a place called Eredo.
Yeah.
E-R-E-D-O, that talks about this community in Nigeria that is dated to be 1000 AD. And that the city they built is basically, from what I understand, 400 square miles. And the diameter of the community is 100 square miles in diameter. If this community was up and running in 1000 AD, my question is, when did they start building it? My next question is, when did they begin to do the technological and the scientific studies that would have allowed them to be able to even think about building it?
Mm.
And how long did they study this in order to perfect it? Ramparts that are 7.5 stories high, 75 feet tall.
Yeah.
It's like a building that's 7.5 stories high.
That's it. The
wall all around this city.
Mm.
Now, if I calculate time, that means that city was in the process of being built when the pyramids were being built in Egypt. So it's hard to put dates on things until we start doing our own research.
Definitely.
And that's why I think it's important. So I'm concerned. I'll tell you this, we go back much further than we think.
Most definitely. I think that's what people got a taste of with our brother Patar from the other night when he was speaking. Because again, you got to start to put certain things into context. Again, once you understand the 26,000 year cycle,
yes,
how long you have to exist to see it, record it, build on it, as you said, develop the science around that to build in stone that's still lasting to today, to record these astronomical events. Like, again, as you're saying, the time factor just keeps getting bigger and bigger the more you kind of try and think about it. It's definitely a funny one, but it's something that I definitely think people need to sit down and encompass more. And again, one of the key elements that our brother Patar touched on is understanding why they've changed your perception of time.
That's right.
In everything that you do, you know, even when we was over, Anthony Broder came over here and we were in the British Museum together and we were talking, and he was reminding me of that time or that moment in time when all the countries came together and decided to move time and space to Greenwich and, you know, create that whole different mean time system, and again, subject everybody to a whole different calendar and perception of when and how they exist. So, you know, I think it's definitely an important factor.
Yeah, and you know,
to think about these things. Go on, brother.
Yeah, there's no question. And you know, in my conversations with Siba Patar, when you stop and just try to calculate time, and when you deal with his calendar, the Rossorian calendar, and when you understand the Gregorian calendar, when you understand the fact that our ancestors used many different calendars, not just one, but many different calendars. Mm. The one we're on is an agricultural calendar. But there's also a cosmic calendar. There's a star calendar. And when you look at that great year that he talks about, that 26,000 year calendar, that calendar that was broken up into 12 sections. Each section was 2,160 years in length. Hmm. And how our ancestors were able to calculate the movement around the constellation Orion, and the fact that when you go into the three pyramids, Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaure, When you go into those calendars, all entrances are on the north side. And if every one of those entrance ways was a telescope, every one of them all converge on the North Star. That's how exact the science was. So we have a brother, Nur Ankamin, who wrote a book, The African Origins of Electromagnetism, where he talks about Africans having light. They had portable light. But where's the science behind that? Well, the science is the fact that if the pyramids were built for a specific task at night, how could they only have been built during the day? Because how would our ancestors have known even to build it for something at nighttime? They had to have had light. They had to have ways to be able to capture light and be able to use it in the dark.
Illuminate.
But because we caught up with Ben Franklin and then putting that kite up in the sky, we think that he's the one that developed it here in the United States. But that goes back to the Gregorian calendar. When someone tells a perfect lie, the truth is unbelievable. And that's what they've given us. The Gregorian calendar is a perfect lie. It has no significance whatsoever as it relates to what time it really is. And the only way that we know is because of the age of the constellations of which all time is based on as it relates to the cosmic calendar. That 26,000 year. And that 26,000 year, how would you even know the first 26,000 years that you even have a pattern?
This is it. Explosion time. Boom.
You see, at what, how many times would you have to experience that 26,000 year experience to say, wait a minute, I see a pattern here? You would have to go into that at least 7 or 8 times.
Right.
And would have to have been conscious, intellectually.
To perceive it.
To perceive that there's a pattern. This is science.
It's beautiful.
I'm just asking folk to think about what I'm saying. See, the way I do it is when I teach this, I teach the calendar. And in my college classes, I would be sitting in front of the room and there would be doors, exit doors to either side of me. And I would open the class by saying, okay, here I am. I'm teaching. And somebody comes in that door over there and they come right here in front of me and they look at you and then they walk out that door. Tell me what you can tell me right now. What do you know just happened? Don't insinuate and don't predict. Just tell me raw what happened. Story is, he walked in, stood there, walked out. Okay. I keep talking. We go bye, right? All of a sudden, he appears again. He comes and he stands in front and he walks out. Now what can you tell me? He did it again. Okay. I talk. I keep teaching. He comes in again. Stops, does the same thing, walk out. Now what can you tell me? He did it again. It's not until the 5th time that the students tell me maybe there's a pattern.
Right.
So what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to clock him. From when he comes in, you're going to clock from when he comes in the door. When he stands here, you're going to clock when he comes here and walk out. Then somebody's going to clock how long it takes for him to come back around to do it again.
Yeah.
Practically, this is how I teach that 26,000 year calendar. You don't know nothing about him when he come in the first time.
Yeah. It's just
you really don't know anything about him the second time. So how could you have so perfectly charted a 26,000 year calendar if you hadn't gone through that pattern 6, 7, 8, 9 times and perfected it to the point where you were able to situate temples on the earth, all around the earth, that could follow that star?
Real talk. in stone?
Science. Science is seen spirituality, and spirituality is unseen science.
Speak it. Definitely. Definitely.
Not personal. Science. But we have to get to this point, family, where we're discussing this on this issue, these ways, these ideas, not emotional. We don't get upset. We're able to have open, honest dialogue where everybody has a right to speak. Even if you don't like what the person's saying, give them the safety to be able to express themselves, because we're all learning. And as an African people, the kinds of societies that worked best for us were those that were open and loving, and everybody felt safe.
Listen, brother, I know we're coming to the end of the hour period in which we've allotted, and we've run it where we've been a nice interactive show where we've asked questions and what. I want to remind the people again, this is only the beginning. It's only the beginning. There's going to be more to come. Our brother's going to be bringing more information, and there'll be more chance for building. So again, like, share, and subscribe this video. Get out there. Yeah, I hope people have been taking notes and writing down things, because there's definitely points to go and research on. Yeah, and again, as the brother already pointed out, a lot of this isn't about believing what he's saying, what we're saying, what you're hearing. It's about making it your own truth. And the only way that's going to happen is by you taking away this information and you personally making your own journey into it. Yeah, where you create a relationship with the information. You understand your place within it. Yeah, and you can stand in it then and move forward in your own life. Yeah, without that, it's just talk. Yeah, it's just talk. It's just a video. It's just a YouTube channel. So please remember that, people. That is the point of that. We've got one more question that we just want to get in from the studio, and then I'm going to let you close up, brother. So yeah, what's the question, Joe?
Yeah, sorry, brother Kaba. It's a two-part question, yeah?
Okay, brother Joe. In
relation to the 26,000-year cycle, is there a low conscious field and a high conscious field to it?
Well, there's always the balance of both. There's always the low, there's always a high, there's always a left, there's always a right. One of the principles in the Kabbalion is the law of polarity. That whenever you have two extremes, you always have all matters of degree between the two.
Right.
And as you're dealing with this star power, the energy from the stars, you understand where it is that you want to receive your greatest frequency. Free people drawn into frequencies and patterns and vibrations. And it's according to where all of us are in this stream of consciousness that decides where you would be as it relates to that consciousness. So the low exists and the high exists. The question is, where do you want to be? And what do you choose to be? And that's what our answers are trying to get us to understand. Each and every one of us has to choose. It's like the story of the log and the swimmer. In the waters, a log is pushed by the waters wherever the waters want to go. If the waters come and push right, the log goes right. If the push is left, it goes left. Wherever the waters push, the log follows. The swimmer can use his or her body to go under the wave, over the wave, through the wave. So the swimmer chooses what it's going to do. So my question to our people, are you a log or are you a swimmer? Are you going to go wherever the stream pushes you? Or are you going to use your divine intelligence to be able to maneuver through anything and keep going wherever you were going in that water? We have to choose what we're going to do. We have to decide for ourselves, for our children, and for those yet unborn, for our community, what we're going to do. That becomes the question.
Most definitely, brother.
He said it was a two-part question.
Yeah, because as again, to my understanding, yeah, in that 26,000 year cycle, that's why I asked you, is there a low conscious field and high conscious field? I liked the way that you elaborated that there's a duality always going on. But to my understanding, even in that duality, through that 26,000 year cycle, you can access a higher of yourself. You get what I'm trying to say? So when we was relating it back to that celestial calendar of that 26,000 years, I feel sometimes we didn't need as much observation. You know what I mean? Because when we're higher in that field, we could have perceived that cycle anyway.
Well, that to my understanding, that cycle was always taught to us. That cycle is in us. There are so many people I have known as I've traveled who have never gone to so-called formal school, but they have engaged me in a conversation where I learn more from them than people I know that have 2 PhDs from Harvard or Oxford or Cambridge. They're vibrating at a different level. Life is allowing them to vibrate. Their reception to the world around them, to their environment, allows them to perceive a world. We are living in that 26,000 year cycle from the moment it began until the moment it ended for all time. That's what the time-space continuum is.
Yeah.
You are time and space personified. And that's why the choice is yours. And that's why I say, don't believe me. Because if you believe me, you become like the log in the water. If I can make you think, then you become the swimmer. The most productive society is when every citizen of that society is free to think and to act.
Well said.
Yeah, most definitely, brother. I think you clearly answered those questions. I think you've left the people with a lot to think about. Again, I want to thank everybody that's been tuning in. And like, it's funny because every time you've spoken, you've kind of answered a question that's come up. That's why I haven't really been asking the chat room, because as you've been speaking, you've been answering the questions as and when they've been coming up. So I want to thank you for that. I want to big up the chat room for participating. Yeah, I want to thank my friend Joe, who's in the studio with me, kicking his own questions. Again, I want to thank Brother Kaba for entertaining Black Ice TV and bringing that knowledge to the UK. Yeah, I'm really privileged for that. And again, this is only the first. I know people are still coming in the chat now and realizing the show's going on. Go back, watch it. Go back and see my brother Patar Seeker's show as well from the other day, because it will set the tone for what we've been talking about today and what we're going to talk about future tense. Again, brother, tell the people where to find you and where to find you as far as the shock metaphysics go. And we'll do this process at the end of each show that we do. But again, now go in, brother.
And you can go to my website. I'm in the process of completing my second book. It's called Spirituality Before Religions. And I have a free e-course because the topics I'm getting into in that book is deep. It's areas that I don't know if we've really discussed as a people. The information is there. There have been great scholars that have done this work by my research. But I'm approaching it in order to understand what spirituality is before religions ever existed.
Yeah.
I also have my 44-page study guide up there that gives you an idea of the work that I've been doing in outline form. It also keeps you informed as to the work that I'm doing. I'm just completing, with my son Heru and I, just completing a documentary on the life of Al-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, Malcolm X, looking at the last year of his life and what he experienced. And that's on pre-order right now. So if you go to www.kabakamene.com, www.kabakamene.com, www.kabakamene.com. You'll be able to download over 5 days. It's a 5-day e-course. It's free, and the study guide is free. And it's a conversation that I think we need to have from research that I've done. And then also you'll be able to see other things. For instance, this particular piece that I'll have the privilege of doing with Black Eyes TV is on West Africa. I have a 4-part series up on the site on this, that I did a 5-part class here in New York and New Jersey on West Africa. We just don't understand our history. I know we hear about the fact that at one time there was no Sahara Desert, but no one ever really, at least to my knowledge, explained it. And those that have explained it, I've done research on their work. They made me think, and I've come to realize that we actually had a river where the Sahara Desert is right now. And it flowed from the Atlas Mountains in North Africa straight out through southern Mauritania. And during the humid time in Africa, the river flourished. Under the desert sands, they have found crocodile and fish bones that once were in that river. They have found botanical evidence of that river. But then when the arid season came, that river dried up. And that's what became the Sahara Desert. The people that were living on the other side of the river, they migrated south. We're talking about maybe 4000 BC now.
Okay.
The people that lived on the northern side of the river, they traveled north. The people that traveled north became the Africans of North Africa. The ones that traveled south were the actual people who would create the Kingdom of Ghana. So when we're looking at the Kingdom of Ghana, 300 BC, there were over 400 little nations that were in that area in southern Mauritania. And by the way, it wasn't Ghana. Ghana was the name of the king. The nation that was created is called Ouagadougou. W-A-G-A-D-U, Ouagadougou. It's not the kingdom of ancient Ghana. It's the kingdom of Ouagadougou. Ghana is what they call the king. Like the king in Mali, they call Mansa, and the king in Songhai, they called Askia. So we're going to talk about West Africa to help us understand exactly who we are, because the people that we're going to talk about eventually are going to be the people that are going to find themselves, guess where? In the American hemisphere. So we are the descendants of these great people who, traveling from Egypt, were the ones that built the pyramids. So family, do you get a sense of what I'm saying? I'm saying don't be surprised at your greatness here in the American hemisphere. Don't be surprised in London. Don't be surprised in UK. Don't be surprised in Holland. Don't be surprised in France, because you are the descendants of the pyramid builders. That's the point that I want to make over our next few classes.
No doubt.
Go to my website, family, www.kabakamene.com. I'm telling you, we got information. And what I say to you, Brother Richie, Brother Joe, to all the people who are listening to Black Ice, to my brother Siba Patah Sika Asa, that's my brother. I say keep on keeping on, because it ain't over till we win.
Most definitely. You heard it there, people. I think that's a beautiful way to bring the show to a close. Yeah, again, I want to thank my brother for his time. Hopefully, we'll be back same time next Tuesday. You were saying Tuesdays is your better day for this.
Yes, yes, my brother. But we'll talk about that Tuesday.
All right, cool. Definitely.
But we definitely will come back. Tuesday is the best day for me. I think I'll be out of town next Tuesday, but we will arrange a Tuesday soon. It'll be in fact, I'd like to say 2 weeks from now.
Cool. Yeah, I'm definitely available. I think the people don't want a big time stretch before they see you again.
I don't either. I don't either. So let's look at 2 weeks from this time. Same time. 5 o'clock my time, 10 o'clock UK time.
Perfect. I'm
2
there
weeks.
for it. All right. So you heard it there, people.
Same time, same station.
That's it. That's it. That's it. You know what time it is. Let me just get you that logo, flash it up so you know where you're at, where you're situated. It's another Black Eyes TV production, people. Big up to the chat room. Shout out to Sister Sapphire doing that moderator role. Yeah, pushing up the links for all the websites in the chat. You should be able to find also the links in the description of the video once it goes up. But again, yeah, big up to everybody. We will be back soon with more. Black Eyes TV out.